Another of Kings Island's live show offerings for the 2024 season has opened, Gazillion Bubbles. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are, and that's who we care about. Freaking Bubbles, Don.
Yeah, so Ryan, you had a chance to see the show, I believe, this past Saturday. I saw it on the preview day for pass holders. What were your initial thoughts?
So it was funny because I very specifically went to the park on Saturday to see the show because we were going to do this subject matter. And, I had Erin with me and I told her, like, this isn't going to be good. I've seen this before and it's cheesy. Like, the ending's really cool, but I don't feel that way. I honestly, like I said in a previous episode that I was hoping that I was wrong and that the disappointing part of the show is going to be that the run is so short. I think that's the case. And I was looking back at footage from the year that I saw it at SeaWorld, and it seems like a lot of the show has changed. A lot of it's the same. I'm not sure if it's the same guy, to be honest with you. I couldn't really tell. This guy seems a little young for, how long ago that was that I saw it at SeaWorld. But they added a lot to the end, and we'll go through the different stages of the show. But I feel like for those of you who have seen the show, there are segments where, he talks about bubbles and he does tricks while explaining it. And that's like not the best part, but it's very minimal for this version. For the one that I saw at SeaWorld, it was the whole middle of the show. So I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. What were your thoughts on it? Let's just start at the baseline.
It was a little different than the show I had seen at Dollywood. Length of the show was a little surprising. I had clocked it at 40 minutes. It started at 3:00 and it was 3:41.
Yes.
When it ended. So I don't know if that was, it's because there was more dialogue with, the kids he pulled up on stage, or if that might have drawn it out a little bit more, or whatever it was. But that surprised me. I was thinking, 25 minutes, because that's what it had been before. There was a lot more going on at the end and more extended, I would say. I mean, it had, that spectacular ending when I saw it at Dollywood, but it seemed to be a little bit, longer. And just when you thought it was over, here's a little bit more. And then again, here's a little bit more. So I liked it. I thought it was good. Now I ask you, Ryan, now that you were impressed with it, 3-week run, as we record this, it's even fewer days than the 21 days that it was going to run. But for you, in your opinion, now I'm going to ask you, is it worth cutting off part of the show run of Trailblazers Extreme out in the Showplace Theater to put something in Kings Island Theater for 3 weeks, just so that building wasn't going to be dark all year?
To be fair, Trailblazers Extreme hasn't opened yet, so that could be the greatest show in the world.
Right, we don't know, but I'm saying it normally started like around June 5th or 6th every year. And so 3 weeks of that's been chopped off to make room for this, so they could have something in Kings Island Theater. So do you feel like that was a good trade-off based on what you saw?
Yes, because of the diversity that you get from this. It's indoors. Days like, I mean, who knows when you're listening to this, you, the listener, but it's like 100 degrees out right now. So no better place in Kings Island to be than in the Kings Island Theater when it's hot, because that's like the most air-conditioned building on earth, But I think that the wow factor of the show is there, and the interactivity, and it's just fun, and the audience gets into it. So I don't want to advocate and say that, like, oh, we got a fair deal by having, this short 3-week run, because I still feel like entertainment is far more important than what they're kind of treating it as right now. Yeah. But as far as having to make some sacrifices, if I have to make that choice, I'm okay with it. What about you?
I think it was a good trade-off. You don't want to see a theater dark during the summer months, especially a marquee theater like the Kings Island Theater there. And as I exited the theater, I sat down outside and I started thinking, okay, this is here for 3 weeks, with Kings Island's attendance now. I mean, just very high concentration of season pass holders anymore. I mean, there was a time when, it was maybe 33% pass holders, 33% 30%, whatever, just single day tickets, and then 30 something percent group sales. Well, those days are gone. I mean, it's highly concentrated on season pass nowadays. That maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to do. And I want to get your thoughts on this. But for me, that maybe down the road, when all the the budgetary things have been taken care of down the road, so we're talking maybe 2026, 2027, whatever it may be, that maybe you do a series of shorter run shows, and you have one that's running from Memorial Day to the end of June. Then you have a show in July. You have a show in August through Labor Day. Just 3 different types of shows or something in there. So you're giving your pass holders, a reason to keep coming back and to want to watch a show again. Where maybe the bubble show, maybe it's a 1 or 2 time thing, and if that was all summer, you're not going to watch it every day. And I think as you got to the middle of the summer, by that time, attendance or, in the theater would start to wane a little bit. It wouldn't be drawing the crowds that it will over these 3 weeks, the longer it would be there for a show like that. So I started thinking that maybe that's the direction to go, is just have shorter run shows and just keep things fresh, but also keep the theaters, open. And maybe you have a few days, down where you're just changing the set in that. But I don't think that would be a bad way to go. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to on this podcast and the other program, both Holiday World and Dollywood have talked about how they're trying to not have any dark time in their venues, so they're bringing in things like the Bubble Show. The Bubble Show is actually going back to Dollywood. It was there last year because they just want to have stuff in there at all times. But yeah, I completely agree. If you look at the thing that comes to mind is like the ice skating shows. Like they were packed when the season started, and then by like end of July or so, there's a couple hundred people. Recently they've had shows that are good enough where they've had a following, where they've got some people that see every show in a day and so on. So, for Phantom Theater Encore and the various Cirque shows, you had a little bit better attendance. But you and I both are people where like, I'll probably see this Bubble Show next time I go to the park if I'm there while it's going on. You may too. Not everybody's like that, though. A lot of people are like, I've seen this. I don't want to see it again. And I don't want to get into the pontification side of things, but this can sell tickets. This can drive attendance, but it has to be communicated out that it's a short run. So I don't think that was the intention with this. I think that if they could have, they would have had this guy for more like 6 weeks, have a normal run for the Kings Island Theater. But if they have 2 or 3 different shows, and there is that expense to that, you got to bring people in, you got to build whatever sets they do, you got to train people, you got to reprogram the light, a myriad of other things. So a lot more expensive with that. But if it can be properly communicated, I think you can sell tickets doing that, let alone season pass driving and so on.
Right.
But let's get out of our marketing mindsets and let's talk more about the show itself. So I originally had told you and others that the show is a grown man blowing bubbles, and I stand by that. But that's not to say that it wasn't more fun than I remember it. It's like, let me put up a video here. Most of these videos, obviously, I took vertical because we're doing them as shorts, but this is it at its worst. At the very beginning of the show, he's running around, he's got the bubble wand and stuff, and I feel like that's just not a lot to see. But I think that was the last time I saw it, there was more of this. But moving forward, there's a lot more tricks. So if those of you who are audio listeners, he's got the special solution for bubbles where they have more, it's like structural integrity, and he's able to like pop little holes in them and they leak air rather than just popping. So I think that was really cool. But when we talk about the star of the show, we're not talking about the bubbles. We're talking about the ending, where everything turns into a rave. There are freaking bubbles everywhere. There are lasers, there are videos. Like, that's still my favorite part. And I think that a lot of people didn't see that coming,
No, it's a spectacular ending of this show, and it's definitely worth seeing. So if you're going to be at Kings Island between now and July 7th, definitely check it out. But just the things you can do with bubbles, this guy was putting, bubbles inside of bubbles inside of bubbles.
Yes.
That was impressive to be able to do that. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking, man, when I was a kid, if only I'd, practice making bubbles instead of trying to perfect my baseball swing, I might have been on, done a show or something. No, just kidding about that. But no, it's impressive with what he's able to do. A lot of skill, a lot of talent involved with that, a lot of timing. You have to have a knowledge of how long you have to do something with that. I like that it's interactive.
Yes.
Bringing the kids up on stage, putting the kids inside of bubbles. Those kids are going to remember that for a long time. Great photo
Yes.
op for the parents, when the kids go up on stage. So there's a lot to like about the show.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, and it's funny because I bet you didn't notice this at Dollywood because this is par for the course for them, but it stuck out like a sore thumb at Kings Island. This is not a 25-minute show. This is more like a 40 to 45-minute show. So I kept on thinking like, okay, well, first of all, it hit the half-hour mark, and he hadn't done the lasers, like the big ending with the lasers and stuff. And I was like, there's no way he cut that out. That was like the best part of the show. Then they start that up, and it was like, okay. And I was like, I remember it being better. And then they go into an extra scene, which we'll discuss in a second. And I was like, this is kind of impressive. I started watching my watch, like 35 minutes. And then he goes into the grand finale, which is like the big, huge part, So, yeah, it was about a 40-minute show. I imagine that flexes within, 2 to 5 minutes or so, depending on the people that he brings on stage. But I like that, especially if it was an outdoor show, that wouldn't fly. Having people stand out in the sun, sit out in the sun is asking a lot of people. But for an indoor show like that, where people are kind of taking a break while they're at it, I think that's awesome that it went a little bit longer. Now, let's talk about that extra scene. So for those of you who saw Gravity, remember the scene when the dude, I wish I had video of this, but the laser comes out of the stage and he looks like he can tap it and all that stuff. Yeah. Who, I don't know if it was the bubble guy that did the laser scene, the laser grab thing. He's a million times better than the guy from Cirque. So just to describe what it was like, basically he's standing on this riser on the stage, and a laser comes up, and he acts like he taps it, and the laser goes to the side. So it's a lot of like syncing up and stuff like that. But then one of the big endings for Cirque was the guy grabbed the laser and came out, like, so obviously he has some sort of device in his hand, and he acted like it was hard to control, kind of like lightsabers are if you don't have the force or whatever, But this guy, what he was doing was every once in a while he grabbed the laser and he put it above his head, and it would stick to the wall behind him. So there's more and more lasers kind of shooting out of the wall. I thought that was like the most impressive thing ever. I love that.
I really enjoyed that part of it. That was something I wasn't expecting. Hadn't seen that before when I'd seen the bubble show.
So they didn't have that when you saw it at Dollywood?
Did not see that part. That's
awesome. Like that was the part that blew me away.
It may have been there, but I didn't remember it, but
I think you would remember it. But what was funny though was he did the same trick like 8 times in a row, and it never got old because every time he did it was equally as impressive. And like, a lot of times when you get a lot of these circus, like I remember one of the Cirque acts a couple years ago had them balancing on, like, do you remember like they were rods about 2 feet tall and with like a piece of wood on the top, and they were like upside down, and sometimes they do one hand. Like, don't get me wrong, never in a million years could I do that. But after I saw him do it for the first 30 seconds, I kind of got it,
Right.
But it went on for like 5 minutes. So it's like, okay, cool. I get it. You're stronger than me. Okay. But this like didn't get old, and then at the end, there was the lasers and the bubbles and stuff. And we sat, not in the back, but we were kind of like, if it was numbered like a normal arena, we'd be in the front row of the 200 section. And we were like stage left, like front row of the back section, stage left. So I remember there being bubbles kind of dumped everywhere, but I kind of thought like, okay, the area of fire is going to be in the mosh pit in front of the stage. We're going to be okay. But we weren't. Every single spot in that arena, that venue was covered in bubbles. And they did give you a nice little warning at the beginning about how bubble solution is slippery. I'm going to reiterate that and say that I'm glad I was sitting on the end seat, because once you got to the carpet, it was pretty relieving, but it's like putting wet soap on the floor when people were trying to leave.
Yeah, I sat in the very back row of the theater, pretty much straight on. And the reason I chose
Okay.
that seat is I wanted to, number one, I just wanted to be able to see the whole, stage. I didn't want to miss anything that was happening. But also, I wanted to be able to I wanted to gauge the crowd. Were the end of the show? Were they paying attention? As it kept going a little bit longer past that normal 25 minutes, were people,
Yes.
starting to like get a little, antsy, ready for the show to end. And some other Kings Island shows in the park's history, had that situation where once you got to that 20, 25 minutes, okay, I want to get back out and ride rides, eat food, or whatever it might be. That didn't happen here. Everybody in the theater was, and it was packed, standing room only. Everybody was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, when I saw it, it wasn't super packed. I would say it was like 80% of capacity or so. But I did notice people leaving. And the thing that surprised me was one of the kids that got to go on stage, as soon as they got one on stage, and they always give them the little prize of like the bubbles. They left like 2 minutes later. I guess like they got their freebie out of it and they were done. But kids are unpredictable though, so you don't know if they left because the kid got bored or if they left because the kid had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you never know.
And this kid was 3 or 4 years old. So, so I would recommend it. So, it's running in the Kings Island Theater. It's a very limited run. Let me pull up the information on the show, just so we can make sure that it's communicated out.
Yeah, especially if you're a pass holder. I mean, make plans to visit the park between now and July 7th. I think the show has one day off during the week. I'm not exactly sure what day that is, but
I believe it's Thursdays, and it runs June 15th through July 7th. So it's already opened, obviously, but it's running through July 7th. So it gives you a couple weeks to do it.
yeah, but definitely make plans to see the show. It's worth visiting the park if just for the day. You might only see it one time, but it might be something that if you see it early enough, you want to come back again before it ends on July 7th and see it a second time, because it is a spectacular show. To be able to add that as late as they did, trying to juggle the numbers and stuff to make it work. I think it's a great show to have in there. And I did hear from several guests who saw the show on Friday or Saturday that told me that they actually enjoyed it better than Phantom Theater Encore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to each their own, because it would be it's definitely more exciting than Phantom Theater Encore, but Phantom Theater Encore is also a pretty different show. It's in the same vein of why we gave Under the Stars its own Tower Topics, but Country Crossroads in retrospect were their own show, because at least you can have a favorite amongst those two. While they're different, they're both shows, while Fireworks show is different. This one is so substantially different,
Yeah, what I noticed too, though, was the ones that were telling me they preferred this over Phantom Theater. They weren't around when Phantom Theater the ride was there, so they had no like personal connection to that. They enjoyed the show, but no personal connection. But those that had that personal connection, they still, they probably wish that Phantom Theater Encore was something that ran every single year at Kings Island in the Kings Island Theater.
Yeah, if anything, I would like to see it make a case for Phantom Theater coming back someday, but that's a discussion for other days. So I saw it when it was open to the public. Like I said, it was pretty packed. It was probably 80% of the theater capacity, which that's a very large theater, by the way. It seats 800 something. You went and you saw it. They had the prestige pass holders, and then the normal like peasant pass holders were a few hours later. So you went to the second one, right? For the regular season
the pass one. Yeah, I was around the theater when the prestige pass holders were going in. Definitely not the crowd that was waiting to get in at 3:00. I got there around 2:30 to get in line for it, and I was down, past the Chicken Shack on that side
really?
in line. Oh yeah. I mean, it was there was the demand was there. People had heard about it, interested in it, wanted to check it out. And like I said, I think everyone left thoroughly entertained.
I think so too. Now, for yours, since it was the preview day, was that like the media day too, or was it just season pass?
I didn't see any, like TV news crews or, anyone from the Cincinnati Enquirer, Dayton Daily News for that. I did see some of the ones that they consider their group of influencers. I saw some of them there. They had, some seats in the front row and that for them. So I
Mhm.
did see some of those individuals, but in terms of actual like news media, I did not see that. I did not see anything on a morning news show. I mean, it might have been there, and I missed it, but I did not see anything where, the guy doing the show was, talking to one of the, reporters for live hits and just kind of giving demonstrations or anything like that. Maybe that'll come, but
Yeah.
that word of mouth. I mean, those the communication they had, through their email. I got a number of text alerts from the park. It was all over their social media about the preview events. Not a lot of notice, but enough to intrigue you and make you want to check it out. So good job by the park to pack that theater for that 3 o'clock show on Friday.
Yeah. I guess just the lesson learned is that, like I said, I always thought it was weird when with the prestige pass holders, how like there's a dedicated lane for them for the first 2 hours the park's open. It's like prestige pass holders show up at 5. Have the dedicated lane between 4 and 6.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, if you're a prestige pass holder, a lot of them were probably working, and 3 o'clock wasn't the ideal time. But as you got to the 5 o'clock for the other show, by that time people are off work, and might have been the first thing they did when they arrived at the park. But it was great to see the theater full, standing room only crowds like that.
It's always exciting, but yeah, I would recommend it. So again, running through July, what got their website pulled up? July 7th. Yeah, thanks. Cool. Don, so okay, one last question about the Gazillion Bubble show. If you wanted to be the most handsome person in the Kings Island Theater for the Gazillion Bubble show, what shirt would you wear?
Well, I would wear, this is just me, might not be
Okay,
you, but
okay.
just me. I would wear a Tower Topics t-shirt. Now, you ask, how do I get one of those?
I didn't ask, but how do you get one of those?
Ryan and I have those available that you can purchase for $22 if you're a fan of the show. You can send us a direct message on X. It's Tower_Topics. Again, $22. That includes shipping. Comes in like 88 sizes. So, whatever you need, we'll be able to get that for you. And they get shipped out within a matter of days. It's a very comfortable shirt. One of the most comfortable t-shirts that I own. It's a fantastic logo that Ryan here took days, weeks, months to design and perfect. So a lot of hard work went into that. And it is kind of cool to walk around Kings Island, or I actually saw one the other day. I was in Meyer in
Really?
Fairfield, and somebody had a Tower Topic shirt on. So it was kind of cool to see those shirts out and about. Maybe I'll see one at a Reds game or something.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Definitely, if you see somebody else wearing a Tower Topics t-shirt, give them a high five, or I don't know, touch elbows if you're still in COVID mode or something.
Well, we do the transactions via Venmo, so it's a very simple way to make your purchase. If you don't have X, you can reach out to us here on YouTube. Just drop us a message that you're interested, and or give us an email or something, and we'll make that happen for you.
We will make it happen. Don, enough about shirts. I know that you love to talk about fashion, but let's move on to the listener question. Listener questions. I'm so like, we used to only do one question, so I'm still like, listener question is the segment, but that's
you
not
read the
the
first
case anymore.
It
Yeah,
looks like they're asking me to answer the question, so you read this one.
So Tim from Morrow, Ohio asks, Don, how has Kings Island changed since you first started working there?
Well, that would be 2007. I would say the biggest change, I would say, is the culinary experience. I mean, it's just dramatically better than it was when I got there in 2007. I think at that time, Kings Island would have been in that discussion for, some of the worst, food that you get outside of the pizza and Skyline Chili. I mean, it was chicken tenders, burgers, pizza, Skyline Chili. That was your options.
Yeah.
So they've really elevated the culinary experience. Several years ago, Mark Boyer took over the food and beverage. He had been in the resale side with merchandise and games and that. He's done a fantastic job. The teams that has been put together there in food and beverage is fantastic. A lot of really highly talented people. They brought Chef Major in back in like 2018. He really elevated another level, and I think the chef they have there now, Chef Perez, he's finding his groove now and doing a really good job. So I think that's the biggest change since I first started working there. And I think the other, if you had to pick something else, would be that it's a lot younger staff that works at the park now. That I'm talking about all the full-time people. When I got there, there was a lot of individuals that had been there 30, 40 years, and you know, got to that point. You started losing people to retirements and that. Some moved on to other parks in the chain. You lose a lot of institutional knowledge over the years, but a lot of talented individuals, were ready to step in and take their place. So I think that's the other part. It was just the experience that they had in 2007. Maybe isn't as extensive as what it is today, but the talent level is still the same.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess the question was directed at you because you were on the inside looking out, but from the outside looking in, we're talking about.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you, what do you think? Over the past 17, 18 years.
I guess it doesn't matter what I think. No, we're talking about different companies at this point because in 2007, it was the Kinzel era, and that group of people, a lot of them were great at operating parks. A lot of them had no business running a company as big as it was after the merger, So I would say that the biggest transition in that period was going from the old guard to Matt We Met, and Matt We Met really set a brand new standard, and he put the bar really, really high. And I'm not saying, a lot of people when they brought him in because he was the president of Disneyland and the Disney Cruise stuff, it's like we're not going to get theme stuff. The budget's not going to really change. But I think part of the culinary thing was, he saw at Disney that makes money, so let's do that. And themed areas and stuff like that. Maybe he had an impact on that. He saw the value in it.
Well, I think the other thing about it too that Matt We Met brought to the table was the empowerment. Giving everyone a chance to make the decision.
Yes.
And it might not always be the right decision, but he wasn't going to fault someone if they truly thought that was the right thing to do in a certain situation. So he brought that to the table, and I think a lot of that's still in place.
Yeah, like I remember when that first thing rolled out, where it was like, if somebody drops their ice cream cone and you see it happen, even if you're a ride up, walk them up to the ice cream stand and say, hey, they dropped their ice cream. Can you take care of them and stuff? And I always thought that was something that was like, they probably would have done in the past, but it wasn't a written policy. So the kids wouldn't either A, wouldn't think to do something like that, or B, would be afraid that they would take them up there and be like, no, they got to pay for another one. And then it's like embarrassing. So I thought that was huge from a customer service standpoint. And then from him went in, like, that's when, Zimmerman and, that whole crew came in, all former Paramount people. And I feel like Paramount there's a lot of flaws in the Paramount. I'm not super nostalgic for Paramounts or anything, but I felt like Paramount Old Guard was much better with the guest experience from a customer service standpoint than Cedar Fair with the Old Guard. There was a lot of arrogance on that side. I think there still is, to be honest with you. But, you brought them in and it's kind of like, how can we make the best day ever and so on. And I think that, we're hard on them now about budget cuts and stuff like that. But I think at the root of everything they do now, it's an attempt at least to make the guest happy.
Yeah, Dick Kenzel, I want to say something about him, though. A lot of times I see him take hits from, guests, whether it's on social media, fan sites, or whatever. Dick really treated me well during my time working with him. I got opportunities to go to some other parks and help out in that, and he was always appreciative of that. Now, he didn't always, remember my name when he would come visit Kings Island, or he'd see me
Right.
say at Carowinds helping out with Intimidator. Instead of Don, he'd say, Doug, thanks for coming up to help out. Or I'd see him at Cedar Point the next. Dan, great to see you.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, how's it going? So it was like that kind of a thing. But he at least recognized the face. He recognized what I was doing, that I was, stepping in, helping out, those kind of things. So he recognized that kind of stuff. And But again, always, really good to me. So I have nothing negative to say about Dick Kinzel.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I can't speak from experience with Dick Kinzel because he wasn't around all that long after the merger. Like they extended his contract before he retired. Matt, we met took over in like 2013 or so. Um, but there are some things that he said where he said like the quiet part out loud, especially on the conference calls. When one that's rather infamous is he asked something about like somebody asked like, do you plan on doing anything with the culinary experience? And he's like, why would we do that? People got to eat. They're just gonna buy whatever we have, So
I think that was something about the food prices. Did he feel that those were becoming outrageous at the time? And he just said, what are they going to do? People got to eat. I was not. I mean, there were things like that weren't the most
right, and I don't think that
correct or
he
polished
he
thing to say.
intended it in a manner of like forget them, they're just guests or whatever. I mean, there are people that still in this company or in the company today that have that attitude, but I'm not suggesting that Dick Kinzel was one of those people. But that was definitely a quiet part out loud kind of situation. And there was also after the merger, because you got to remember the merger happened in 2006. It codified in June 30th, 2006. So it was about 3 months after the announcement. And then 2007 started to get rocky. 2008, the economy tanks like big time. So they were pretty hard up for money. And he was talking about, we're going to raise prices, but it's just going to be a few dimes. No one's going to notice. And it's like, again, like in a lot of different businesses, if like you say things in a manner of, we're going to do this thing, we're going to raise prices, and like people probably just won't notice. Like that's usually dirty pool. You don't say that. That's not a good way to serve your customers. But with that being said, that's what everyone does. That's just again saying the quiet part out loud. But like I met Dick Kinzel once, very, very nice to me. I really don't have anything particularly personal bad to say about him beyond the things that I had expressed. I just think that it was like one of those kind of like Cleveland area brash, like very to the point kind of things. But that's neither.
No, like I said, for me, he was always. I saw him at Carowinds, and I was, filling in as an interim PR manager there. Got to thank you. It was genuine. It was authentic. Same thing when I was helping out at Cedar Point with different things. The Diamondback, announcements, Diamondback launches, stuff like that. So when I would see him, I got the genuine thank you, and I can say that people I came across over the years that wasn't always the case. So that meant a lot, and that kind of stood out. That you remember, how you got treated by people sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny how like the little things they rein in with you, and you always remember them, and your impression of that person is always based off of that. Like you and I were discussing, I'm not going to name any names, but somebody that was indirectly your boss a couple of years ago, and they were nice to me when they found out that I had a family situation, and it's like that was nothing to them, but like that's how I remember them. So that's a big deal. But very good question, Tim from Morrow, Ohio. But next question, Leslie K from Wilmington, Ohio. Planning a visit to Kings Island for the first time in about 20 years. Well, welcome back. I'll be with my husband, our 2 children, and their children, ages 5 and 7. Any tips to help us plan our visit? That's a great question. And that's a great ages to go because the new Camp Snoopy's opening. Or opened, I guess would be more accurate.
First thing, get all-day dining.
Yeah.
You will not regret that. So that's going to allow you to make it the most affordable. Because if you're going to be there all day, you're going to need several meals, but get all-day dining, get the drink plan. You're going to want to make sure that you stay hydrated. So if you get that drink plan where every 15 minutes or so you're able to get a refill, they've got the water, they've got the Powerade, things like that. So if it's the middle of the summer, it's 85, 90, 95 degrees. You can stay hydrated that way. So that would be 2 tips right there. And I think the other thing is find out what everyone's interest is. Sometimes parents, they won't ride a ride because the younger kids can't go on it. But there's that parent swap program that you can take advantage of too. So if that's the case where you want to go ride something but you can't because of the kids and that, they'd be on the sideline, go to guest services, get the details and take advantage of the parent swap program. I think that can also enhance your visit.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm just, working with a little bit of information that we do have ages 5 and 7. So if those kids do not visit the parks very often, then, obviously Snoopy Soapbox Racers will be a good starting off point to kind of break the ice with roller coasters.
Character meet and greets.
Character meet and greets if they love the Peanuts characters. If not, then they'll learn to love the Peanuts characters. I recommend Schroeder and Franklin, my 2 favorites. Second only, of course, to Snoopy because he's a beagle.
Yeah.
But also,
a lot of rides in the kids area between Planet Snoopy, Camp Snoopy that the kids and their parents can all enjoy together.
Okay. Yeah. So we can go into a lot of details about make sure you ride this, make sure you ride that. And that's water off a duck's back. Let me tell you this. If you do one thing, watch the fireworks, watch them from International Street, very, very front of the park, facing the Eiffel Tower. That's going to top off your night so incredibly perfectly. You're going to love it.
Yeah. And also buy your tickets online. While you're buying your tickets online, that's where you want to get your dining plan, drink plan, buy your parking, all those kind of things online. That'll save you money. It's going to be a little bit of a savings than you'd find if you, paid at the front gate.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Hey, thanks for the question, Leslie, and let us know how it goes. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.